Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are checking out the album Calico by Ryan Beatty. So a few weeks ago we sat down and listened to Ryan Beatty's new album, Sweet Fortune. I really enjoyed it. If you haven't seen that reaction, definitely check it out. The link's in the description. With Calico, Calico has been sitting in my list for a very, very long time. I actually know a few songs off of it already, including Bruises Off the Peach and Cinnamon Bread. I was also gifted the vinyl by a friend of mine a while back, and I haven't checked it out yet. And then I think the third reason that I've been really excited to check it out is I've heard it's like his best album. Like most people I've talked to about it have considered that his like top. So yeah, listening to this album just has been a long time coming, and I'm just really excited to get into it. All right, without further ado, we're gonna get started with track one, which is called Ribbons.
It took all of California to remind you why you came. Monterey to Camarillo.
His voice sounds so different on this compared to Sweet Fortune.
Driving with the headlights off.
It's like clear. It's a lot more front in the mix, like a lot more forward in the mix.
Cause you've never known love like that, so you dance the night away. And the night bleeds into Sunday morning, and it feels like it's going your way. Then all the lights in the bar turn on, and you remember why you came.
Oh, I love the backing vocals.
And suddenly you're sober, and suddenly you're older.
The story that he's telling is just moving so fast.
Who's gonna hold you while you sleep? It's brave to be nothing to no one at all.
That's a line.
It's out of my hands. I'm making faces at the one who stares at me at the end of the glass.
Wow, we have a whole minute and a half of outro. He's done that on a lot of the songs I've heard of his. I feel like that was a common recurring element off of Sweet Fortune. Normally I don't like that, but I like it with Ryan. He gets a pass, you know? Because his music is so like, it's very like reflective. Like this gives you a second to like, also like his instrumental, like it really matches what the song is saying. It, like he's very good at capturing a moment. So it's nice to just like sit in the moment for a little bit, you know? Oh, that was sudden. Huh, okay. All right, so that was track one, Ribbons, and that was really pretty. And I think it was a cool way to kick off the album. The song itself, first of all, I was trying to figure out before the song started what like ribbons means, and the fact that it's like tears streaming down someone's face. That's so creative. How do you think? You know, how do you come up with that? I think that's so fun. Like that's so creative. I love that so much. I think that's so cool. But when it comes to the song is clearly about like coming to acceptance with being by yourself, being alone, not having a lover. It's something that he seems to kind of judge at the beginning of the song because he's talking about like, you know, I think he says like who's going to be there when you sleep. He's like he's at the very least he's questioning it, he's judging it, but then towards the end he's kind of talking about how he's like making faces in the glass, which means he's kind of looking at himself being alone and being good natured about it, being okay with it, accepting it, or at least getting close to acceptance. So I think it's a very reflective song, as a lot of his songs are. And it ruminates on the idea of being alone in a way that I haven't really heard before in a song, which is unique because there's only so many things to talk about. And yeah, I loved that it was so much like the inside of his brain, you know, like it's so much of his actual thought process that you're hearing. It's not him, like you know what I mean? It's like show versus tell. There's so many songs that are like, I'm alone and I'm okay with it. But in this, you literally get to see the pieces of his brain slowly come to the acceptance. And he never actually comes out and has to say, I've accepted being alone. He really paints a picture with his songwriting. He's an incredibly talented songwriter. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. And I'm wondering if this was chosen as the first track and also the lead single. I'm pretty sure this was, and the only lead single, like the only single. To me, that means that this song, hopefully moving forward, should be a good way to like actually introduce the album, actually tell you what the album is going to be about. So I'm expecting similar themes that we've explored in this song to sort of pervade through the rest of the album. All right, let's get to track 2, which is called Bruises Off the Peach. I've heard this song. I've never actually read into what he's saying, and you can do that with Ryan Beatty because his voice is so pretty that he could sing the ABCs, and I'd be like, this is a great song, adding it to the playlist, you know. So yeah, I think it'll be nice to sit and actually listen to the lyrics for once and understand what the song's about.
Something's missing, and that's alright, I promise. I'm gonna give it until August. I'm not a Christian, I'm careless like a comet. You couldn't have me if you wanted. I cut all the bruises off the
I do have to
peach.
say that's a stunning visual.
Not as beautiful, but still as
Like what a great
sweet.
unique analogy.
There you go again with all your needs.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
What did it ever have to do with me? What did it ever have to do
That's an
with
important
me?
thing to ask you every single time you're wronged.
Staring at the ceiling now, a million hours pass. Love will always last. Love will always hold me down. What is it all about? Not as
I
beautiful,
think I preferred it
but
without that
still
percussion being
as
added in.
sweet.
I liked it when it was a little bit smoother.
There you go again with all your needs. What did it ever have to do with me? What did
Yeah,
it
I think
ever
this is such a
have
good
to
question to ask.
do
I'm glad that
with me?
he continues to bring it up.
I cut all the bruises off the pieces.
Oh, the vocals in the back. Oh my god. His vocal arrangements are always so good. All right. So that was track 2, Bruises Off the Peach. I thought the thing that really shines for me in this song is his vocal arranging. I think that his harmonies are always so tight. They're so pretty. He also like he has such a stunning voice, but he's able to like he puts all of that stuff in the back. You know what I mean? And uses it to really layer. Whereas so many people would try to have that be at the forefront of the record. Um, I just think that it creates a really cool foundation for the song, and it makes it like kind of more of a soundscape, I guess, you know. And I think he's throughout Sweet Fortune, he did a great job of that, and it looks like he's going to continue doing that here. He's doing a really good job with the harmonies. I really love the visual of the Bruises Off the Peach. I think it's incredibly unique. Yeah, I mean, it just does such a again, it's the show versus tell thing, right? His songwriting, everything I'm gonna say just routes back to that. You know what I mean? His songwriting is just incredible. I also think that question that he asks throughout the song is so important. The what did it ever have to do with me? I think that there's so many cases where whether it be in a romantic relationship, a platonic relationship, there's just so many times we go through something where we're hurt or we're wronged in some way. And I think that one of the only ways to really get past those things is to ask yourself that question of what did it ever have to do with me, and realizing that when people treat you poorly, it has so much more to do with them than it ever has to do with you. It's not that you weren't worthy of better treatment. It wasn't that you know, like, now every situation is going to most cases it's going to be a two-way street, absolutely, and it's good to reflect on what you might have done in the situation that was wrong or whatever, right? But in general, when you are just like unilaterally wronged, it's so easy to obsess over it and be like, what about me made them do that, and did I deserve it? Or even just being angry at them, like, why did they do that? Why did they do that? It's just important to be like, you know, what did it ever have to do with me? It didn't. Maybe at the end of the day they were insecure. Maybe at the end of the day they had something going on. And so having that kind of grace really for yourself is what helps you like heal from something. So I thought him saying that question, asking that question over and over again was just really important, and especially like the hope that's throughout the song where he's like love will always last, love will always hold me down. The fact that he's cutting the bruises off but it's still as sweet. He's got this hope in him that despite leaving a situation or a person behind, life is still as sweet, love is still as sweet to him, you know. So it's a great sentiment. All right, let's get into track three, which is Cinnamon Bread. It is the first song I ever heard off of this album, and it's the one of two songs that I've heard. But similarly, I'd never actually listened to the lyrics really that hard before, and so I don't actually know what it's about. I just like it because his voice is so nice and the instrumentation is so nice. It's just a very well made song. So it'll be nice to sit and actually listen to what he's saying. It's just so like warm sounding, you know? I do like that he always goes for like live arrangements and like acoustic sounds. So much warmer than like
Infinite
a
jest,
bunch
my
of
cinnamon
synths.
bread. Why don't you make yourself at home? When you open up, you close me in and cut me to the bone, close as a kiss on the lip to the southern tip until you're red in the face. Now you got nothing to say. You galloped on the piano keys like a Liberace fool.
Hmm.
You hummed a little out of tune and somehow you sounded cool. I can't lie, May, June, July. I was a good guy and you came over that day.
So is this like getting too close and that kind of like not ruins the relationship but puts a rut in it, stops it in its tracks because like you crossed the line? Yeah.
Now the dog is running
I must have left open the gate, now the dog is running away. He opened himself up too much to like this happening. And like being scared of getting too close.
This goes on
Oh, I
forever.
love this part.
Could you ever keep me safe? Like all the men you've loved, the women you've loved. You tell me we're in this together when I know it's not the case. Cause all the men you love, the women you love, they all got something to say.
Ugh. His songs feel so short. They're all like above 3 minutes. I don't think he makes short songs, but
You couldn't keep me away.
ugh, I always need more. Ugh. The chills, like I've heard this song a million times, but every time it's just instant chills. So this was track three, Cinnamon Bread. It's a song that I've heard before, as I mentioned, but I'd never really listened to the lyrics. Listening now, it seems like it's a song kind of about being on a different page than the person you're seeing. Um, it seems like he has like a lot of fear and trust issues when it comes to opening himself up. He does a really good job of painting that image. Again, I'm just every song I'm so impressed with his songwriting. Um, because you do really have to like listen to what he's saying to understand it. The imagery he uses of like leaving the gate open in the sense of like leaving himself open and the dog running out. So like by leaving himself open, he's like leaving himself open to her. You know what I mean? Like it's just he really avoids a lot of the very common obvious cliches that people go for when trying to make a song like this. And it's almost like he's trying to say something that hasn't really been said before, which again is like such a difficult thing to do, but he does it in a way where he's also not being overcomplicated. You know what I mean? I feel like there are artists out there who have to try to sound profound, and so they'll say something in a way it's never been said before but it doesn't add anything. But in his case, it's not overly complicated. It doesn't sound forced. It sounds like this was actually the best way for him to phrase it. And yet it's describing a situation in a way it's never been heard before, you know, and from a perspective that maybe we haven't seen. So um, he's treading a very very careful line there, which again just shows very honed songwriting skills. He also does a really good job of like describing the nature of the relationship he's in, it still sounds like that sort of clumsy first few moments of the relationship. One of the things he talks about is finding it really endearing, or like saying like they hum out of tune and somehow it still sounds cool. It's like the moments at the beginning of the relationship where a lot of the stranger things that they do, you still kind of find endearing. And then that kind of gets a little bit frustrating of like, how are you so perfect? Like, how is everything you do perfect? You know what I mean? That, like, it's just two lines, but it immediately puts you in the frame of mind of where he must have been. And then it helps put like the bridge in context of where he's talking about like, all the people you've been with before. I'm sure they have stuff to say about you. That's why I'm like concerned. It sets that entire story up really, really well. And then I think the other thing that really works for this song is just the instrumentation. I mean, it's so cinematic. Every song is like it's like a moment you can kind of sink into. So it's just, yeah. I mean, we've heard three of the tracks, which is a third of the album. This is a very quick album, but all three have just been terrific songwriting, and the production is just so well done. All right, let's go to track 4, which is called Andromeda. I think I actually have heard this song. I think my friend Hannah, which I doubt you're ever going to see this, but if you do, hi Hannah. um, Before she gifted me this vinyl, actually, she I think she told me that hey, you should really listen to this album, you'll love it, and she played this track off of it. And I kept telling myself, oh, I want to listen to the album in full, and so I never actually went back to the song, but it was this song, so I don't remember a damn thing about it. But I'm sure it's going to be great. So let's just get into it. Ooh, I love how it like bounces between the ears.
Sleep into reality television. It was in Arizona, pleasure with the wind. That night I had a dream, you took me dancing.
I'm telling you, he's making movies with his
Degrees
songwriting. I can see every moment of this. It's just so visual.
It's not everything I wish for, but I didn't care. Just like having you there. What stops me from sending the call in a midnight paranoia? Hey, that's love after all, isn't it? What stops me
Wow.
from spending it all, spinning out Andromeda, watching Jupiter come back around again? Let them laugh, let
I'm
them
just
have
like,
their
I'm so
fun.
floored by
My
how
sister's
well
raising a
his
baby
songwriting, his voice, and the production
in
work
the
together.
house where my
That
mother
song sounded like
grew.
the chorus sounded so
If I would
spacey,
have known
which
where
matches
I would
perfectly what he's
go,
singing
I
about.
let go, why didn't I stay?
Mm, perfect
All
harmonies
that
too.
we've had is all that we had. There's a wound in the past. What stops me from spending it all, spinning out Andromeda, watching Jupiter come back around again?
Hmm. Another 45 seconds of instrumental, but if anybody can do that, it's him. Whoever his like co-producers are, incredible. I feel like I didn't even say anything during this one. It's just so easy to lose yourself in these songs. All right, so that was track 4, Andromeda, or Andromeda, as I was saying it before this, I think. um, yeah, I mean, it's just another testament to how well his production and his songwriting and his voice go together, you know? Um, I did see it mentioned that the writing for this album was done before any of the production was actually done, any of the arrangements were written, and you can kind of feel that here because again, it's like talking about space, spinning out, Andromeda, Jupiter, etc. Right? There's a lot of references to space, and that chorus just feels so spacey, so like it's like very wall of sound, but it's also kind of echoey, like it's in a void. You know what I mean? Like it has that sort of spacey sound. I don't know the production elements that make a song sound spacey, but this has that, right? And so it's one of those moments where you can kind of tell like they just go so hand in hand, and I bet that's why, that the fact that he chose to develop this album in that way of songwriting first, which allowed him to sort of focus on that part of the art, which you can tell because it's a fantastically written album so far. But then the fact that the productions just marry it so well. He's not just like taking a production or a beat that he found somewhere else and then just writing whatever to it, you know. It's just all so intentional. Song-wise, this is kind of about like a short but like very like intense relationship and how that causes him to spin out. He talks a lot about the like coming home and being really uncomfortable about it and uneasy, and another moment where it's kind of like things going too fast, and what that can do to you, you know. So it's like a recurring theme, which I think is really interesting. A lot of these are about like short bursts of love. They're like a lot of or about like being alone, and like how those things kind of, you know, how he processes those kinds of short little bursts of light in his life. I like, yeah, I have to say, like, I loved Sweet Fortune, but like so far we're 4 for 4. I'm really loving this album so far. All right, let's get to track 5, which is called Bright Red. Man, we are already halfway through this album, I think, right? I think we are. Remarkably short album. Worth it though. It's so good so far.
No cry, no pain.
Ooh, have I heard
Close
this?
up, open,
I feel like I've heard this
rainbow
part.
ahead. Strawberry, bright red. Taste is the sweetest. Honey dripping.
Oh,
A
the
circle
harmonies.
forming. Some
Wow.
blue, some wind. All these satellites litter the sky. Not even we can see past these material things.
I have heard this.
Not even when it's free. Yeah, there's a million ways that this could end. And no horizons
It's very
ever
like,
promised. So while I hold my baby in my arms, I'll count on God to wake us up at
it's
sunrise.
very R&B, no? At the very least, you can hear that kind of influence on this with how the rhythm of the verse kind of ebbs and flows. Also, I love, is that a slide guitar? What is that?
Good day, glitter on my face, screaming your name, laughter everlasting, true love will
Oh my
last
God.
sweeter, but don't crash. Driving up the tube for better views and coastal weather, and I look
Oh,
up
the
at you from
production with the
clouds
harmonies.
above.
Again, wall of
All these
sound.
satellites litter the
Wow.
sky. Not even we can see past these material things. A million ways that this could end, and no horizons ever promised. So while I hold my baby
My
in
God, is
my
he
arms,
allergic
I'll
to a
count on
bridge? This is
God
so much of
to wake
like
us
verse,
up at
chorus, verse, chorus.
sunrise.
Oh, this song could have been like 5 minutes if he wanted. It's probably for the best that he didn't do that, but I'm telling you, I could live in these songs. All right, so that was track 5, Bright Red. I will say the name of the song confuses me a little bit because it's a detail that he mentions at the beginning of the song and then doesn't really touch on again. Um, a little bit like cinnamon bread as well. And in both of those cases, it's hard for me to be like really connecting that to what the song is actually about. Now that being said, every time I feel like this happens with an artist that I have respect for, I kind of think about it and I'm like, well then if it wasn't called that, what else could it be called? And then I can't really come up with anything. So it's clear these people, they know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Even if I sit here and say this shouldn't have been called Bright Red, it's clear that was the right decision. It's just that I don't know how people come up with it. I keep thinking like if I'm the one who made this song, would I have thought of calling it Bright Red, or would I have called it something else? And also like am I even smart enough to be the person to do that? Like, you know what I mean? So it's really interesting the art that goes into naming a song. Now with the song itself, I loved that his rhythm, like his actual melody, Sorry, yeah, his melody. His melody was like less structured. It really kind of came and went and ebbed and flowed. I thought that was a really interesting choice. It reminded me a lot more of R&B. It was very much reminiscent of that rather than, pop or country or folk really to me. Uh, so I thought that was really really cool. I like that touch. I heard like a slide guitar in there. I don't know what the other instrument was, but it was so nice. Oh my god, I want to hear more of that. It like absolutely made it a wall of sound, and he had harmonies going at the same time. Oh, I feel like I'm just repeating myself over and over in every single song, but that was so cool. I love the topic of the song. It's once again there's a lot of hope in this album. Because it is this, again, it's this relationship that hasn't gone far yet, and there's like a slight bit of doubt of like no horizons ever promised. We don't know, this might end, but he's still very hopeful. I'll count on God to wake us up by sunrise. um I think that I think that that's clearly a recurring theme in this album of exploring these sort of short blips, but also there's a lot of hope throughout all of this, which is really interesting. The one thing I just thought of right now is in that last line, he says, I'll count on God to wake us up by sunrise. Before this, he was saying that he's not a Christian. Um, I'm wondering, do those two things have anything to do with each other? Because also earlier on this album, rather than showing that hope, he was talking about these sort of shorter relationships and showing his doubt, talking about, you're saying we're in this together. Is that really the case? Showing doubt. And then it's him moving to then being like, you know what? No horizons ever promised, but I'll count on God to wake us up by sunrise. So it's like he's growing to a more hopeful place. He's gone from saying he's not a Christian to saying he's counting on God. Like there's a lot of movement in the narrative of the general album, which I think is interesting. And it's something I'm going to try to keep sort of keeping track of. It could just be nothing. But again, Ryan Beatty is an incredible songwriter. So I guess if it was nothing, that would be a fluke. That'd be surprising if that's what this was. So all right, let's get to track 6, which is called Hunter, and this is 7 minutes long. That's that. This is two songs. This is two songs. It's not one. It's two songs basically. That's what it feels like. 7 minutes on like a 30-minute album. It's like a third. I'm not good at math. A third? It's a fifth. Yeah, it's less than a fifth, but I am making myself sound so stupid right now. It is a small fraction, or not. It is a like a pretty large fraction of this album, is what I'm trying to say. Like compared to how long the song is, and like if you put that next to how short the album is, this is a huge. Yeah, I. It's not adding up. It's clearly breaking my brain. I'm not talking. I'm not thinking straight. I'm not talking correctly. So whatever. I was begging for a longer song earlier. I was saying the song could have gone for 5, and Ryan said, "Yeah, I can do better. I'll do 7." So that's not something I can really feasibly complain about after this. After this is over, if that's a complaint I have. Hmm.
Follow the trail the hunter proposed me left. Coats in their cardinal red.
Hmm. This is very a hike through nature coded. Like this is he's painting a clear picture
I
here.
swallowed a beer while the man who was holding a deer made his amends.
Can you believe before this I thought Ryan Beatty was straight? I like discovered it while listening to Sweet Fortune that he wasn't straight.
All this time
It's very abstract in its structure.
I've adapted to run. When it gets tough, I disappear.
Hmm.
Warm blood
He does do that. There were a lot of moments throughout his music where he talks about that. This is such a perfect analogy then of being like a scared animal, looking for signs to run. It reminds me of that one song off of Sweet Fortune. I think it's Virtuoso on Sweet Fortune. Holding on to me is like holding on to rain. He's very he kind of flits away from relationships, it seems.
Quilted in calico crane.
He said the word. He said the name. What's the significance though? What made him write that line and be like, that's what the album is called? These are slightly rhetorical questions, but also they're not. If you're seeing this and you know why, comment down below. Help me out here. You know, I'd really appreciate that.
The lights and the curtains burn to the ground.
It's a little bit busy as a song. I think it's the one case I've heard so far where I don't find his voice blending into the production as much. There's just so many competing elements, you know? I do kind of find myself losing my way in terms of what the song is actually about, you know?
If I sold everything, bargain with a wink, it might be enough.
So, like, this is him talking about the prospect of leaving everything behind, maybe?
I'm not seeking a shelter, but I'll be gone for a while, and I don't wanna be found.
That was very abrupt delivery. I don't want to be found. All right, so that was track 6. It was called Hunter. I have conflicted thoughts about it. I think that conceiving this song would, it requires absolute songwriting mastery, and I think that he did a really great job with it. I think that it's so engrossed in this visual he has of like nature and a walk, like walking into wilderness, kind of retreating to a lot of those like animalistic tendencies within us. And a lot of times we talk about animalistic tendencies being like rawr, you know. But this is more kind of the fear that comes with being in danger, the having to constantly be alert and look around, constantly having to escape as well. And he weaves all of this imagery throughout the song, talking about mountains, talking about dead deer and meadows and mares spooked by thunder. So I think that he's clearly very engrossed in this visual, which I think is really cool. It's like a concept song, you know what I mean? It's very abstract in how he delivers it too, because the song doesn't really have that typical verse chorus structure, which is something that he's been using a lot. It's been a repeating structure that he's used, but in this song, rather than being verse chorus, it was I thought it was like gonna be that, but then it was like verse chorus verse, and then everything kind of just like melted away a little bit. Effectively, it kind of just moves where it wants, almost like a train of thought or like an actual walk through the woods, which is also very cool. I think the only problem for me is that I did kind of find myself losing my way throughout it, which is like, wow, doesn't that match the metaphor really well? But like, like I started to like lose what he was really trying to say. And then in a lot of cases, I felt like the production and his voice together got a little bit muddy. It did kind of start, it felt like the elements were starting to compete with each other a little bit. And so it wasn't, this didn't feel as smoothly executed as the rest of the songs on this album were. Um, Now, when it comes to not being able to follow the song, again, that's not necessarily a con for the song. It also just could be that TikTok has fried my brain and I have no attention span anymore. It could be that, but I do feel like I won't be the only one who kind of like loses their way in this song a little bit and kind of lets go of the string with the balloon and kind of loses the song. So for that reason, this will probably be near the bottom of my track ranking, due in part to that and due in part to the fact that every song before this has just been so good and also so tightly made, so surgical, but also allowing a moment to breathe. It's like not too short, not too long. And in the case of this song, I don't know that I really got anything out of it being this long. All right, let's go to track 7 now, which is called White Teeth. And I feel like I've heard people mention this song. I don't know if they've mentioned it as it being like a hit. I don't know if they've mentioned as being like a standout. I don't know what it's mentioned for, but I feel like I've seen this name, White Teeth, come up so many times but when it comes to his discography. So I'm excited to find out why.
I'm not your brother. I can't take care of you. I purchased furniture and place you.
Ooh.
I'd have you over. Jenny's in the other room. She'll be leaving in the afternoon.
I purchased furniture in place of you. I'm still stuck on that.
We could both wait. Clear water, still water, what's a code name? Stay close or go far, I'll still wait.
I've heard that part before. The clear water, still water part.
Summer rain. Some less, some right, so strange. White teeth to red wine stain.
Another moment where he names a song after a metaphor he made. Or like a simple, like, one-time moment in the song. So he loves the country, man, huh? I feel like there's so many references to that. Hunting. Oh, I love his voice. Oh, man.
Some less, some right, so strange. In the porch light, handprint on a window pane.
Speaking of porch light, can you imagine Ryan and Noah Khan? I feel like that'd be a great collaboration.
Some left, but the right ones stay. Some left, but the right ones stay.
I didn't really have a lot to say throughout this one. Part of it is, again, sinking into the song, but part of it is because I don't know that I fully captured what the significance of white teeth to a red wine stain was. He does make me feel a little bit stupid in this song, I feel like. All right, so that was track 7, White Teeth. He follows a pattern here that he has been following for a few songs where he takes an otherwise ordinary moment or symbol and kind of fixes the song on that and kind of like rides that symbol out as much as he can. And it does work really well for a lot of these songs. It's what makes a lot of his writing really unique because he doesn't necessarily go for the grandiose. He doesn't go for like the biggest cliche. He describes things as like not mundane things, but like these things that he's seeing every day, images that we might see and we might not really appreciate for what they can tell us about what we're feeling. He uses his surroundings to really tell a story about like what he's thinking in here, which is a really unique songwriting strategy. But being honest, beyond like the cozy imagery which matches the songs that have come before this, I didn't really grasp the significance of white teeth to a red wine stain and what that means for what he's talking about in this song. And so that made it harder for me to really connect to this one compared to a lot of the songs that came before this. And I think that's the risk, I suppose, of writing a song so fixated on visuals, where sometimes in painting the picture, you might lose people who kind of need you to spell it out a little bit more clearly. If you're someone who listened to the song and you get it, please help me out. Comment that down in the comments. See, clearly, I could just be too stupid to get it. But yeah, I had some trouble connecting with this one for that reason. I couldn't really grasp it. All right, let's go to track 8, which is called Multiple Endings. We're not anchored on an everyday object anymore. So it'll be interesting to see what this is about. Already more like, sorry, hit my funny bone, more somber sounding. Somber is in the emotion, not the artist. Got to clarify that now.
So you pull me apart, and you're making me answer, but I don't answer to you. I went through days with multiple endings
Hmm.
just to get through. So now you're nervous, come out with the crying.
Ooh, his voice is kind of
Boy, it's
clashing with the
hard
production again,
being
no?
you.
They almost feel like they're on different timings.
We looked at the TV for less than an hour. Boy, it's hard being used. You were right. Texas is hot at night.
He's fixating on a moment again
Thank
or a
God for the
conversation.
wind. There's a storm inside. I didn't offer a room. I gave you a bed. Was all that a dream? Was it all in my head?
Is there like a lot of autotune on his voice? I feel like there's some effects on his voice that are harsher than they are in other songs. Which is interesting as a choice for a song that's as stripped back as this one is. Hmm. I just love
You were
the little
right.
like sparkle of piano.
Texas is hot at night. Thank God for the
But this is
wind.
once again him picking a single
There's a
lyric that
storm
shows up once
inside.
and using that as the anchor
I
for the whole
didn't
song.
offer a room. I gave you
It's
a
a line that doesn't
bed.
actually on its own really connect to anything of
Was all
what the
that a
song is about.
dream? Was
But
it
then
all
what
in
else
my
would you call this song? Would you call it All in My Head?
head?
Like what, you know, right? What would you call it?
Um,
Maybe it's a unique problem you get when you're a very good songwriter, you know, of like, what did I call this? How do I anchor this song and actually say what it's about? So that was track 8, multiple endings, very sparse production, especially compared to like the first half of the album. He's kind of moved away from those incredibly cinematic arrangements and moved to something that's a little bit lonelier, a little bit quieter. It pulls kind of everything away, and it does allow the voice to sit up in the forefront, so you can focus more on what he's singing and how he's singing it. I don't know if I imagined it. It did seem like there was like an effect on his voice, like some like a really strong pitch correct. I wonder if that was intentional, and if it was, like, what does that mean, you know? In this case, this song seems to be about it's a song that laces in a lot of the doubt that he was experiencing in the at the beginning of the album, where he's in this relationship, but he's still like kind of cycling in his head through all the ways that it could end, and that's what the multiple endings part of this, I think that's what that means, is of just being like, because you have doubt about the relationship, because you're insecure, you're overthinking it, and you're like, what are all the ways that this could end, so I can be prepared for when it ends, you know what I mean? It's something, it's like, it's where you hash out every worst outcome in your head because you're nervous about it. It's such a common like coping tactic, and it's what he's doing, and it's what the multiple endings part of the song is about. But this is another case where, unlike the songs in the first half of the album, I do feel like it is a little bit overcomplicated, at least for me, of like, it's not connecting well. I'm not listening to this and being like, wow, these really complicated analogies or this hyperfixation on a specific object or moment was worth it. It's something that's coming through and adding new colors to something that's already been sung about, right? That's not necessarily the case here, where it was for the previous songs, where the way he described the situation was so unique that it provided this new perspective. It added these textures and colors I hadn't thought about. That isn't necessarily in the case, because it just gets so muddy that, I mean, I guess it's a personal preference, but when I listen to a song, when it comes to the songwriting, I want to make sure that I know what every individual line is adding to the song, so I can justify why it's there, so I can understand what it means. And in a lot of this song and the past couple of songs, I feel like that wasn't necessarily the case. I can't really take a line and tell you exactly what it means, or tell you even like what it offers to the song, what would be missing from the song if this line wasn't there. It's something I'm not really able to say. And It's something that for me tells me that a song's writing is a little bit too convoluted for me to really connect with it. That's the signal for me. So that's where I landed on this song. I just wasn't able to connect to it as well as some of the other songs, and I think that's been the case for the past couple songs on this album. All right, short album. Let's get to the last track, which is track 9, and it's called Little Faith.
A brown paper bag with 30 something tablets
Like
to
medication.
clean up my act, to keep it real candid. I sat down at the table, took a pill from the palm of an angel. They say that it's good, it could save you. I don't think I wanna do this,
Oh,
but I can't give in to my old ways.
I love that harmony.
So go on, honey, hallelujah for a little faith. The laundry is turning.
That was a really pretty chorus, or whatever that
And
was.
every day I've been hurting. The plant has been dying. I've watered it twice, I've been trying.
Is that like a metaphor for his like
Growing
mental
red,
well-being?
yellow, then drying. I try once in a while.
Kind of talking about how he's taking medication, he's trying to help himself grow,
But it died right there that day.
be better, but it's still kind of like
So go on,
getting
son.
worse.
Hallelujah for a little faith. What's it gonna take? What's it gonna take?
Oh, I love that lower harmony. What's it gonna take?
Have a little
Yeah, I love that. Wow, I love the production.
going through your jewelry. I smile, but I know you see through me. You knew who I was before I knew
Wow.
on the very first day. Now I know what you're on to. You were just looking for someone to talk to.
I love these
For
melodies.
life to belong to. Now you're getting your way. I didn't think I'd wanna be here, but something told me I should stay.
Is this about like suicidal ideation?
Hallelujah for a little faith.
Hmm.
What's it gonna take? What's it gonna take?
Wow.
Have a little faith. Have a little faith.
This song feels like a return to form for like the rest of the songs on the album. The verse chorus thing, and then followed by like a instrumental outro with beautiful harmonies over it. It's clearly his preferred structure for a song, and it works well. All right, so that was track 9. Beautiful song. I was really impressed by that song. The song itself is really about mental health. It's a song where, especially compared to some of the last few songs on this album, I was able to understand what it was saying. I was able to connect with his choice of symbolisms and visuals and stuff a little bit better. I understood why they were there, what they meant, etc. And in this case, there was like a lot of talk about him, like, talking about medicating himself, how it's not something necessarily he wanted to do, but he had to make sure that he took care of himself. Describing himself like a plant and how he's watering it, but it continues to die. And sort of how mental health can kind of be like that, where you do all the things you're supposed to do. You take your medication, you journal, you reflect, you do all these things that in theory are supposed to help with your mental well-being, and yet things kind of still start to dry out at the edges, things still get a little bit worse, and so it's that kind of like frustration of like, I'm watering the plant, why is it drying out, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. That was a really cool visual to use. I really liked that. And again, it shows like he's talking about a plant in a way that maybe you haven't heard it described before, because it's almost mundane. It's almost an everyday thing. And yet it adds a new color to the frustration of trying to fix your mental health and it's not getting better, you know? And then I really loved that final part he had about his mother, talking about how she kind of knew him before he knew himself. She saw right through him. I don't know if that's talking about his sexual orientation, or if it's talking about some other, or if it's talking about his low mental health as well. Because he's like, you got what you wanted. He was talking about how he's decided to stay, and that kind of reminded me of a little bit of like suicidal ideation. Maybe that's an extreme. Maybe that's not what he's talking about, but that's the vibe I got of him being like, I've chosen to stay. I've made the choice to not leave this life too early. Um, and crediting his mother for that and being like, you got what you wanted, in a very sweet way. Um, and so it could be about multiple things there, but that was really moving. That really had an impact on me. I thought that was really, really sweet. And I think that this is just a beautiful, yeah, a beautiful way to end the album. Right, because it's like, it's almost like he's surprised himself. He's like, I didn't expect to want to be here, but like I guess I'll stay anyway. It's very honest, it's very vulnerable. And yeah, this was just a really beautiful song. All right, so that was Calico. I think it's overall it's a very beautiful album that creates these really incredible scenes exploring short-lived flings, exploring loneliness, being by yourself, and all of the insecurities and unwarranted hope that and doubt as well that Ryan kind of feels throughout. So it's a very focused album. It didn't really feel like a shotgun album where he's just hitting all sorts of topics at once. It does seem like it's very, very the themes are the album itself is very cohesive. He uses the same sort of themes throughout the song. He's an incredible songwriter. I say this throughout, but he does a really great job of like painting his thought process throughout a song. He clearly has this songwriter tendency of taking these ordinary or seemingly ordinary moments and objects and anchoring the song to those moments and using them to tell a story in a way you haven't necessarily heard before. And in a lot of cases, that serves the song really, really well. It adds this really interesting texture and colors to these songs that we maybe haven't heard before, because so many songs that are about the same topic kind of overuse the same cliches, whereas he's kind of coming up with his own rooted in a lot of his memories. So that shows really remarkable songwriting skill. I also think that a lot of the album is produced really beautifully, really cinematically. And you can tell that the songwriting came first and then the production, because the production in most of the songs supports the songwriting so well. In most of the cases, it doesn't really compete with it, but it's still complicated where if you just heard the instrumental, the song would still be beautiful. It's an art on its own, and it also supports the writing really well and connects to it. So I think that the partnership of Ryan and all his producers and like the folks that he worked with was really well done. They clearly have a really good symbiosis. Now, going back to his songwriter tendency of picking an object or a moment or a lyric that maybe comes up at the beginning of a song and then kind of fades away. In some cases, it really does serve him. In some cases, for me, it did make the songs a little bit harder to connect to. Um, where he's so engrossed in this concept, this abstract concept for the song, that I end this song not necessarily knowing what exactly he was trying to say. And I mentioned this thing that I do. I have this barometer for songwriting for myself, where I try to make sure that when I'm listening to a song, I know what every line actually adds to the song. I know how it serves what the song is talking about. I know why it's there. I understand. I don't have to justify it being there. I understand why it's there. And there were several songs on this, especially in the latter half of the album, where there were entire sections of the songs where I didn't fully understand what it meant, what it added to the song, why it was there. And the other thing that really tied to it was also the way the songs and even the album were named. Because for a lot of the songs, I was thinking to myself, like if you name a song Bright Red, I understand how he uses it in the song. Bright red strawberries. That's what he was talking about, right? Um, what I didn't understand was, what does that have to do with what the song is actually about. Maybe it's something that I'm just really used to that doesn't necessarily always need to be the case. Maybe the title of a song doesn't always have to be completely 100% stitched and married to what the song is about. So it tells you what the song is about before it even happens. Maybe that's a bad idea, right? I'm not a songwriter, so I don't know. But that's something that I've gotten really used to of you hear a song and the title kind of it connects a little bit to what the song is actually about. And in this case, it was so often a lyric that shows up for a second at the beginning of the song and then never comes back, and it has you kind of going, well, why that? And I think the same thing also applies to the title of the album, because I only heard Calico mentioned once. He talks about Calico Cream, and for me, I finished the album being like, well, I know what the album is about, and I know how the songs serve that those different topics and themes that he's talking about, but I don't know how that connects to the actual name of the album. What does Calico mean to Ryan? What does it mean to what he's talking about in these songs? Is it, can I justify that being there? Or if this wasn't named Calico, would that feel weird? You know what I mean? Like if you took away the name and it was something else, would that work better or worse? And if it works better, then that to me means that it's just not tied in enough for me to really connect with that title. And that applies to some of the visuals and the analogies used in the songs as well. It's the same thing, right? Where if you removed this, would this song be worse? Would it not make sense? Does this phrase add something that you actually need in the song? And there were a few cases in the latter half of the album where I didn't feel that I could really sort of justify it, you know? Now, again, as the listener, me justifying it is something I do for my own experience. It doesn't necessarily speak to the quality of the album, right? It could be that there's context I'm missing. I've heard so many songs on, like, and albums on this channel where there's historical significance that I'm missing, like CMAT's Euro Country, or a couple of Hosier's albums as well, because they weave so much historical significance and a lot of these visuals that maybe I don't have the context for. And that keeps me from fully connecting to the songs, sure, but it's because there's something there that I'm missing. And then sometimes it is about the songwriting, because the songwriting is so over hyper fixated on this one detail that you lose the forest for the trees. You know, I'm so glad that I got to use that phrase. That's such a fun phrase, and it really applies for me in the way that some of the songs on this album came about. I felt like that's what I was kind of losing. I wasn't getting the bigger picture at times. That being said, the songwriting on this album is incredibly strong. He's one of the best songwriters in the game right now. It's just as strong as it was in Sweet Fortune. If anything, a lot of the songs I connected to even better in this than I did with Sweet Fortune. Um, so I can absolutely see why the folks who regard this as his best album do that. It also makes perfect sense to me that this was the album that put him on like Beyonce's radar, where she tapped him as a songwriter for Cowboy Carter. I fully get that. He clearly has an appreciation for country and folk and Americana without being shackled to those genres, because he also adds influences of other genres in as well, like for example R&B, which again he has this really intense musical backing in terms of like the influences that he has, and I think that's what makes a lot of these songs so special, so unique sounding. You know, I mean, it is just him in like a live arrangement, but it's I just don't see another artist doing this. So yeah, all in all, just a really cohesive, well written, well produced body of work. There are absolutely songs on this that I didn't necessarily sort of connect to, and that could be something I'm missing. So if there's questions I've had that you think you can answer, I'd really appreciate it if you left it in the comments. But other than that, I'm definitely gonna be coming back to this album in the future. But yeah, other than that, if you like this video, make sure you hold on. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you throw it a like. And if you want to see more like this, subscribe. Definitely let me know down below what you thought of the album, how it ranks with albums like Sweet Fortune or maybe other albums that we haven't heard of his yet. Yeah, and other than that, thank you so much for watching, and yeah, have a good one. Bye.